I made a top 10 wandering monster list because Shadow asked me to. I've not been doing much fancy stuff lately. I've been working on Battletech, terrain, and stuff, keeping my hands busy so my mind don't go insane. But it's going to be dungeon specific. I do have top. I didn't think about it too much, but I was like, wait a minute. I have favorite creatures I like using for wandering monsters for specific reasons. But I separate that from wilderness encounters versus dungeons, right? And some of them I won't use in dungeons unless there's caverns attached. But any general ruins, general dungeons, these are my favorite. And I got philosophy behind it, right? Number 10, bottom of the list, ye old giant rat. Anywhere where there's refuse and dank and nasty, there are going to be rodents. And the quintessential dungeon rodent is going to be the rat. The rats of unusual size, so to speak. If it's a living dungeon and there's stuff going on all the time, I use giant rats. My players can attest that if you leave a body and you go back within a few hours and there's giant rats in a dungeon, they will be eating your fallen hirelings and such. And that will make raising a little bit difficult. Bob's missing an eye on half his face because that big rat ate it. That's what they do. They take care of the refuse, and because they're so low on the totem pole and they can squeeze through walls, they'll be prevalent. We're having that problem in the U.S. Wild rodent rat populations are expanding. Not enough predators. While at the same time, giant boars are decreasing because an old predator is back. We're not supposed to talk about mountain lions and cougars, but okay. They're everywhere too if you pay attention. But number 9, skeletons and zombies. Anything that has a foul reputation is going to animate. And I like skeletons and zombies because they're just former adventurers in the dungeon that have been reanimated or whatever, where it's just an evil place that the dead eventually will want to rise. You can use skeletons and zombies to foreshadow how you're going to have horrible traps and stuff in the dungeon, right? Don't have to, but it's what I do. I like to foreshadow a little bit. Pay attention to what's on these corpses. You can put gear on these corpses, these walking dead, that the party might need. A zombie cleric stumping around still with 2 vials of holy water because you have a big monster later on in the module. Typically, I don't give wandering monsters any treasure. They're wandering. They don't, whatever treasure they had when they died, they left it laying on the ground, unless it's still on. If you're feeling generous and it's still on their side, they have a pouch or whatever. But usually things get looted before they animate. Here's one that I think me and Shadow both agreed on: the Sturge. And I will tie that with from Secret of Bone Hill, that ever since I discovered that Lakofka creature, the Ghoul Sturge. So if it's a undead area and it's a very vile and evil necromantic thing, then Ghoul Sturges will be around as well. Sturges prefer warm-blooded, so they're ignored. It's technically an insect. They're ignored by a lot of the undead. They're ignored by cold-blooded creatures, so you could have them coexisting right next to bullywugs and stuff because they're not going to feed on them. The bullywugs and the lizardmen may consider the Sturge a delicacy, especially after it's ate on adventurers. Then that's it. Give me a fat one. Oh, I want a fat, juicy one. It would be like one of those gums with the juicy pops in them when we were kids, squirters or whatever. But yeah, the Sturge and the Ghoul Sturge, because they can range out. They have a far range to search for warm-blooded food. And in the case of the Ghoul Sturge, those things are vicious. They'll knock you out and then just drain you dry, and their little bloated form will crawl off Up to number 7. So that was number 8, Sturge, Ghoul Sturge. I kind of like them. They're handy. My party's fought so many Sturges. Ghouls. Number 7. Any place that's going to have a high turnover of corpses with factions fighting and adventurers going in and getting ground up by the dungeon, there's going to be an endless supply of bodies. Fresh bodies for a dungeon scavenger that can tunnel. They can make little burrows. They might see the light go by and just go, oh, we're going to wait a minute. I'm going to see if anybody dies. Get me a free meal. Because they are intelligent. Whoa. But they still have some bestial intelligence. So, another dungeon scavenger, like the giant rat, is the ghoul. The ghoul would feast, and anything that the ghoul doesn't devour, a giant rat will come along and eat. And when things are dire, the ghouls will grab these rats up. So they kind of balance out. Dungeon scavengers should be common to every dungeon unless it is 100% controlled by my next one, number 6, Dungeon Faction Patrol. What actually lives there? They have patrols that go out and check things. So that should be a no-brainer. Most of your wandering monster list should be thematic in nature. The Dungeon Faction Patrol can be anything. Anything that lives there. It has to maintain those hallways. It has to maintain the perimeter of their lair and have to deal with all these dungeon scavengers eating their cast-offs. They're evil creatures. They're going to be filthy nasty unless they're highly organized. So their filth feeds the scavengers. And when they backstab each other, that feeds the scavengers too. Number 5. This goes back to old school D&D. I mean, let's be honest, Wandering Monster charts predate actual Dungeons & Dragons. They're a Blackmore thing. By a few years, bros. But the Rival Adventure Party is probably the deadliest random encounter you can have because they're going to have the same stuff your party has. And if they're evil in nature, they may have humanoid allies or slaves or minions, right? The quintessential evil wizard plus 20 orc wandering monster encounter also falls under Rival Adventuring Party. They're out looting. The wizard has got his minions, and they are looting stuff in the dungeon, so that counts. Or a small group of dudes with minions, grave robbers working hand in hand with a group of goblins. So a grave robber group would count as a Rival Adventuring Party, in my opinion, as would the big bad wizard walking around with a bunch of orcs, looting forgotten lore and stuff, or a necromancer and a group of skeletons, and maybe a couple acolytes with him looting. That's an adventuring party of NPCs. It's a classed NPC with minions or other adventurers like-minded. So you may have the Rival Adventure Party only like 2 class people, and then a bunch of minions, right? Number 4. Number 4 wandering monster favorite of mine is Random Encounters. It's not a monster. It's dungeon dressing. It's a sound. It's an environmental hazard. It's a freakish weather thing. It's a chaos event. It's just something. Could be a red herring. Could be a magical effect that's triggered by your party walking around that's just to mess with them, confuse them. Something that happens in a dungeon where a wizard had, maybe it's a random magic mouth that taunts them, or the sound and echoes of footsteps in the distance to turn them back. That would be a great thing to do. It's just random. It's a random magical effect that goes around, or it's an environmental effect, or it's just dungeon dressing left by other creatures. Recent one or old one. Maybe I'd give you an opportunity to give your party a clue, or usually something to tell them to run away, or they're going to eat them, stuff like that. Or something to make them chuckle. Oh, I always inject humor in my games, so I like to have some fun. Number 3, it's a non-standard creature. It's from a website, and I like it. And if they're present, there'll be signs of it on the other wandering monsters, like one-eyed rats or an occasional blind rat or whatever. But it's an ocular jelly. It's a jellyfish with eyeballs that floats around, and it can telekinetically tear your eyeballs out of your head, and that's how it devours. That's what it eats and sees, and it floats around. I like them. But you should foreshadow that they're there with a few one-eyed humanoids or rats or something like that. Something missing their eyes. They're super creepy, and once players figure out they got to make a save or suddenly have a -2 to range attacks, and if they fail a second save, they're going to be blind. The terror level will wreck up. And it has a Lovecraftian overtone. I just like them. It works better in some of my sci-fi games. I got a Final Frontier thing where it has a bunch of these on this swamp planet where vampires live. You go in the swamp and there's these eyeball-eating jellies. But it's one of my favorites. I don't use it very often. It's one of those, if you use it too much, people will be upset. Number 2, and if there's any time there's caverns or ruins, I like these creatures as wandering monsters. They can have a lair as well, but hook horrors. I just like them. They're big, dumb, insect-eating people things. The hook horror. I like them. You could play them up. They're around 5 hit dice, so they're immune to most of your low-level crowd control spells, and they have a decent IC, and they can climb on the walls and caverns and attack you from a variety of angles. So I like the hook horror. Number 1. The number 1, and it's the only ambush predator I have I think would wander a lot. Most ambush predators, in my opinion, lay in wait. So oozes and stuff don't wander as much. Their movement's terrible. They wait till you get close and attack you. Same with a mimic. It lures you in. So that should be an encounter as opposed to a wanderer, in my opinion. Is the grill. I just like the big brain thing with tentacles. And I'm surprised they didn't put the carrion crawler on here, because I usually have carrion crawlers in dungeons, but it didn't make my list. But the grill or carrion crawlers, put them together, are your ultimate dungeon scavengers. The carrion crawler is a dungeon scavenger, but the grill is an ambush predator. It just silently floats down, paralyzes your party member, and starts tearing his face off with a beak as it goes up beyond the reach of your swords to its little crack, where it paralyzes their body and just starts eating. And if anybody wakes up early, they might want to crawl off and run. But it's an ambush predator that the color spray doesn't work on. It's too high hit die for sleep. It has tons of attacks, so you can overwhelm PC's ridiculous ACs. And usually you're going to get a surprise attack. And that surprise round, they're not going to have their shields or their decks, because it's a surprise. When they drift down silently from above. Usually I put 1, but you could have a swarm of the ocular jellies, a swarm of the grill, but that's just being real cruel. I mean, then you're rolling encounter, you're in layer encounter. That should be a layer encounter for the grill, and foreshadow it by having 1 wandering around getting goodies in the dungeon. That's my top 10 of wandering monsters for the dungeon. There's that disclaimer, because like I said, I would do stuff totally different for outdoors, and outdoors I have a whole different philosophy on wandering monsters for that. Game well, game off. Later, y'all.